Obviously, I need another job. So I guess we're starting YouTube. Now it's occurred to me that lots of people won't know who I am at all. And some people might know me for lots of different things. So I'm going to talk about who I am, where I've come from, and how I ended up on your screens. I'm going to try not to bore everyone and fly through it in somehow a non-self-aggrandizing or self-indulging way, if that's remotely possible. But I'll begin by explaining the last 10 to 15 years of my career because it's not the most conventional route into fashion and what I do now. I think many of you might have just seen me doing the little videos on social media, which have now obviously made their way onto YouTube Shorts. And I've been doing them on Instagram for many, many years. But for a lot of people, this is the introduction to me. But first of all, I'm not an industry plant or a Nepo baby. And I did kind of just land working in fashion. Now, I didn't actually study fashion or sustainability at university, and even at school, I wasn't really that interested in fashion. I grew up in Derbyshire and mostly just wanted to play football since I was about 4 years old. Unfortunately, that didn't happen, as you can tell because I'm sat here. But after going to university, I did an undergrad and then a master's degree, and then again, very luckily, landed in a PhD in public health. Now, it wasn't until about that point where I started to work in fashion, and again, very luckily, was scouted with my twin brother walking down the street. So, after about 2 weeks, I was then working, I was on photo shoots, and it was as simple as someone literally stopped us and said, "Oh, are you two models?" And we were like, "No." And she says, "Well, have you ever thought about modelling or working in fashion?" And I was like, "No, but sure, why not?" And it kind of went from there. Weirdly, there was a few years where we just worked for anyone. You get a job through your agency, you go to the casting, you book the job, you do it, you go home, you get paid. This was at a time where I was studying, and so I think from my PhD, I was earning about £14,000 a year, which is brilliant because I was one of the lucky ones. But I definitely needed a side job to keep myself afloat. And this modeling thing was kind of just give it a go and see what happens. And I remember being on set a few times and looking at clothing, and I have this very curious mind, and I started to look at the clothes, start to turn them inside out and understand what they were made from. And then there was a kind of moment where I was looking across this showroom of clothing thinking, where is all of this coming from? How does all of this get sold? And it's just a sample set. It's not really clothing that goes into stores. So that led me down loads and loads of rabbit holes to do with sustainability. At the time, no one really spoke about sustainability. There wasn't really a big environmentalist movement within fashion. But having grown some social media following on Instagram, I thought it'd be cool to kind of talk about stuff like that on social media. I did email my agents and my bookers and be like, look, from now on, I don't really want to work with any high street brands or fast fashion brands. And I remember at one point, like the epitome was to work for Topman or ASOS because they were the ones with the most exposure. They were the ones with the most work. They had really good budgets. And as a guy who didn't really understand anything about fashion, that was sort of the job that I wanted. Again, this is all alongside doing my PhD. So I moved to Madrid, got a modelling agency there and carried on working and studying, moved back. It was kind of an ongoing change at that point anyway. So I kind of pivoted the career towards responsible brands and luxury brands. And when you're a fresh face as a model, you kind of do work for more luxury brands at the start because you're a fresh face, which is something the industry still desires a lot. But there was a moment where I'd go to a casting. I think it was a casting in London, and I looked down at the sheet where you have to like fill in your name and your details, and it basically said name, agency, and then social media. And it was at that point where I realized I had to go home and kind of work on social media. Like my Instagram had to become a thing to aid my modeling career. And that's when I started to look into like menswear and how I would communicate my modeling profile and my portfolio, but also start to say some things which are like more who I am and what I care about. So after doing this for a few years, I've moved back to England. I was coming to the end of my PhD and a big opportunity came up. This is in 2021 to do Love Island. Now, this wasn't anything I thought I would ever do. I was around 27, I think, at the time. I didn't apply. I got a message through Instagram and then some emails, met with the producers, and before I knew it, I'd kind of like soft handed in my PhD thesis and had some few weeks spare and thought, yeah, why not? So ended up doing the show. I won't go into the details of how that went, but I did kind of have a plan with the show. And I've spoken about this in interviews, but for those who don't know, I looked at the contestant agreement and decided I would do the show, but not if it meant that I have to wear the fast fashion clothing. So I decided to take all of my own clothes, packed a suitcase just full of the clothes I would wear if I was going on holiday or day to day. The producers were okay with it, and yeah, I didn't wear any fast fashion. I got a bit sunburnt because there was a hat sponsor and they took my baseball caps off me. I remember that being quite tough. But the experience was weird, and it was definitely in the deep end of people who are so far out of my fashion circle and especially my sustainable fashion circle. And I'd be having conversations about re-wearing items or like where my clothes came from. Um, I think most people just thought it was a bit weird. I wasn't really on the nose for the show. And it was quite tough, you know. I made a lot of enemies. I didn't make a lot of enemies. I didn't make many friends in doing it. And I remember when I came home, no one really understood who I was or what I was doing or my angle. It wasn't until the next January where people really understood who I was. And it was because of a protest I went to with a couple of friends outside a PLT and Molly May show. It was like her first creative directorship. And they held a show in London that they said was during London Fashion Week. And we turned up with some signs and kind of tried to raise awareness around the many ethical issues and environmental issues around the Boohoo Group and Pretty Little Thing, and what that whole machine is. Off the back of that, there was a lot of news, a lot of press, a lot of media, lots of interviews. Most people kind of understood what it was about at that point, and that I worked in fashion and that I cared about the planet and sustainability. A few people thought it was me just trying to bash women, which was a weird angle considering I'm standing up for women who are garment makers. But after that, this social media thing kind of started to move a bit quicker, and I started to make videos about like bad things in fashion, news items. In that time point, Shein had come through and Temu and Boohoo had got bigger. And whenever there was a scandal, I would like make a video on it or write an article about it. And it led into more journalistic pieces. But since then, I've been very, very lucky. I'm still modeling and working for brands that I really care about and appreciate and admire. I go to Fashion Week and cover shows, will interview designers and go to factories as well, do factory visits and look at where the clothes come from and how they're made and meet the teams in the ateliers and try and communicate that online for people who've not seen it before or perhaps are on their journey with sustainability as well. So it's been a bit of a whirlwind last 10 years or so. I've moved from one career in academia into one in fashion that is multifaceted. And the reason at the start of this video why I say I guess I just need another job is because now that's turned into YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Threads now and then. I'm on Substack and it's called Fashion's Not For Everyone. And then other interview pieces, factory visits, social media jobs, modeling jobs, and consultancy. So I work with brands or with organizations on projects that they have, whether they need help communicating sustainability stuff. But all of this has been a journey over like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Learning about supply chains, learning about materials, going to universities and talking to lecturers there, going into supply chains and learning. And yeah, kind of a journey of self-discovery and realizing that this is actually the thing that motivates me and moves me, and it's the thing that I'm passionate about. So that's kind of the last few years of my life. I understand there's probably going to be a lot of questions about that and the other things that I have going on. Currently on my YouTube shorts, there's some themes. So like my 12 items a year challenge, which is based on consumption habits from like the 1980s, where we bought 12 items in a single year on average. And now we've moved to like nearly 100 items a year per person. So that's a challenge to set for people who are wanting to reduce their consumption. I think it kind of lent into the underconsumption trend, but also like just buying really, really intentionally good pieces from brands that you want to support, and thinking about clothing more deeply, like why am I actually buying this? How much am I going to wear it? How many times am I going to wear it? And what for? Is it utilitarian? Does it serve a purpose? Is it made from the right material? Is it well constructed? All of these things that I try and help people think about when they now buy clothing. So this YouTube channel, I'm not really sure what it's going to be. People for a long time have said I needed to start a YouTube channel. I am a bit of a professional yapper, and I have just spoke for like 12 minutes straight all about myself, which would be the worst thing that I ever do. But I guess it'd be nice to do some vlog type content, bring you along to the factory visits that I go on, and trips that I do for Fashion Week, and show you behind the scenes of Fashion Week and fashion shows, either the ones that I'm walking in or the ones that I'm attending. But also just trying to get something more long form, because I think social media in general over the last few years, I've seen it change time and time again, but the shorter the content and the snappier and the less nuance seems to do the best. And it's kind of the opposite approach that we need in fashion, in consumption, in sustainability. And that's why I started a Substack. And I think that's kind of why I wanted a YouTube channel to do long format YouTube videos, just so that we can get more interesting conversations going about the clothes that we wear and how they're made and where they come from. And brands, like I can do a deep dive on a brand, but then I'll have to condense it for like 1 minute on Shorts or Instagram, and it's not really fair if you go into these topics in much detail. So probably some of that on here too. I guess we'll just see. The next video I will likely upload will be a trip that I went on with Apple, where I got to interview the VP for Environment Policy and Social Initiatives, Lisa Jackson. I'm going to talk through the decision-making process on taking on the trip, what it was like when I was there, and I've got footage from Segovia, which is where they've just announced a solar farm. So that's probably going to be coming up next, and then before you know it, it will be Fashion Week somewhere, because it always is. So yeah, I hope that is a brief introduction, and I've not rambled on too long, but if you've got any questions, or if you want to give me some recommendations on the content that I should do, and stuff that you like the most, please do, because it will help me a great amount. But yeah, please subscribe. It definitely helps working online as a freelancer. And share this with someone who you think will appreciate it.